Alright, let's get this list started. And at number 10, Radiological Emergency Alert. Over in Georgia, Atlanta, people's phones were buzzing and going off with an alert that says, EAS Radiological Hazard Warning, this is a test. The alert was sent around 8 in the morning, and people in the area were losing their minds. They actually believed that there was some form of like a deadly radiation exposure. Some people were complaining that when they heard this warning on their TVs or radios, it actually didn't mention anything about it, only being a test. They thought this was for real, this was happening. This would for sure freak me out, and I definitely wouldn't leave my house until the news said that, it was all clear. I'd be calling in sick into work and taking a paid radiological emergency day. Take Shelter Emergency Alert tackles its way into this list at number 9. Verizon accidentally sent a scary alert to its customers telling people to take shelter. Well, that's a pretty big mess up. Well, you're looking at the alert right now. It says civil emergency in this area until 1:24 p.m. EST time. Take shelter now, US govern. I have so many questions. First of all, why is this message even pre-written? And why is there an exact time of 1:24 p.m.? I would be scared out of my mind if I saw this message. No one thought that this was just an accident because things like this just don't happen. Well, Verizon took blame for this, and let's just say that if I was a Verizon customer, I'd be switching cell phone providers. Up next on our list at number 8, broken outdoor warning signal. Alright guys, it's time to brace yourselves for this one. You're about to hear a very scary sound. Could you imagine being asleep and then hearing this ominous alarm blast off in the middle of the night? It's definitely not how I would want to be woken up. In fact, I don't ever want to be woken up. I just want to wake up when I wake up. But in this situation, I'd probably jump out of bed or hide under the sheets because I'd be convinced that the end of the world was about to happen. And then it sounds like the signal is dying out at some parts. I guess he doesn't even want to hear the sound coming from his speaker either. San Francisco tsunami alarm storms its way onto this list at number 7. How are people still walking on the streets so calmly? I guess people living in San Francisco, well, I guess they're used to hearing the testing of the tsunami alarm, but as a tourist, I would either die instantly from a heart attack, or I would be trying to find a safe place to take shelter. This alarm sounds like something bad is gonna happen, and I wouldn't want to wait around to see what bad thing is about to happen. Next up at number 6, the very vague outdoor emergency alert.
Attention, an emergency is occurring. Please stay inside. Tune into local area radio and TV stations for further information.
Is this real life right now? There's literally zero details about what's happening. What is the emergency that they're talking about? And why do I have to stay inside? This alarm is making me feel super uncomfortable, but as it turns out, this outdoor warning system malfunctioned and self-activated in the early hours of the morning. Maybe someone desperately didn't want to go into work, so they hacked the system. If that's the case, then I have so much respect for them. 156 emergency sirens go off simultaneously, and this brings us to number 4. People were panicking in Dallas when an evil hacker set off 156 emergency sirens over the weekend.
At 11:42 p.m. Friday, the sirens are supposed to warn about approaching tornadoes, but there were no tornadoes. This is terribly freaky. Some even feared it might be a terrorist attack coming on the heels of the U.S. missile launch against Syria.
The alarms blasted off at 11:42 p.m. on Friday night, and although officials managed to shut them off, the hacker turned them back on. This went on for more than a dozen times throughout the night, and I guess it's safe to say that almost everyone in Dallas didn't get their beauty sleep that night. People were starting to think that terrorists were about to attack, but thankfully it was just a lonely hacker who clearly doesn't have anything better to do with their time. Don't have anything better to do with their lives. Moving things along, in number 3, we have a nuclear attack warning against Canada and the United States. I'm not gonna lie, this warning would send me into complete panic mode. Maybe I should see something about how easily scared I am. Well, anyways, this was the alert. Speakers were start blaring this warning of an imminent nuclear attack against Canadians over in a popular Winnipeg neighborhood. The alert even went on to say this: all Canadian residents should seek out a fallout shelter immediately. If members of the Canadian Armed Forces direct you to a fallout shelter, please follow them for your safety. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau will be speaking on all stations shortly. Well, this sounds pretty legit to me, but this cryptic message was nothing more than a prank. Probably a prank by President Donald Trump, trying to get rid of Justin Trudeau. Next up on our list, number 2, we have the purge announcements. This doesn't sound that good. I know this alarm isn't technically real, but it does send chills down my spine whenever I hear it.
This is not a test. This is your emergency broadcast system announcing the commencement of the annual purge sanctioned by the US government.
Okay, what would you guys be doing if the purge was real? I mean, you're hearing that siren going off and it's time to purge. Let me know what you guys would do in the purge in the comment section below. But to be honest, if all crimes were illegal for 12 hours, I'd probably hit up my favorite store and grab whatever I'm able to carry. I'd probably break into a store, grab a lot of Pokemon cards, go in the Apple store, grab a few headphones. But I know a lot of crazy people would attempt to raid Area 51 because you can't get arrested on purge day, and there's a lot of people who are curious to find out what's down there. And of course, this might be the biggest massacre in history. Air raid sirens in Israel tops this list at number 1. People are literally running on the streets because they know exactly what this alarm means. This warning signals that incoming rockets are on their way. But thankfully, Israel has something called the Iron Dome, which is the defense system that was designed to intercept fired rockets. But still, I couldn't imagine living in a place where this is the norm. These people are living in constant fear, and they never really know how safe they are.
At number 8, we have the social media Amber Alert. So this one absolutely broke my heart, because how can someone even do this? But either way, it took place in Toronto back in March of 2016. A father called the police in the afternoon after his 3-month-old baby and car was stolen. Apparently, he had driven the car to this flea market and the baby was in the back seat and the car was still running when it was stolen. The dad chased after the car, but eventually it was out of sight. Man versus car. You can only chase for so long. The Amber Alert went out and officers from different neighborhoods were put on the case to assist the 23 officers already searching. Constable Craig Brister tweeted out the Amber Alert and it was retweeted more than 1,000 times. Twitter had gone crazy trying to urge everyone to keep an eye out for the baby, and eventually the vehicle was found in a parking lot with the sleeping baby in the bag. The suspect got away though in the end, but as long as the baby was safe, I don't really care what happens to this guy. Unless obviously he strikes again, then we need to take him down. ASAP Rocky. Filling at number 7 slot is Jesus Christ. So this one happened in Australia back in 2007 during the broadcast of Canadian TV show Mayday on Channel 7. Midway through the show, the screen went black and a haunting audio loop started playing for 6 minutes over and over again. The audio was saying, "Jesus Christ, help us all, Lord."
Jesus Christ, help us all, Lord. Jesus Christ, help us all, Lord. Jesus Christ, help us all, Lord. Jesus Christ, help us all, Lord.
As the words were also continuously flashing on the screen. It turns out the audio was taken from a news program that had aired the year before, and it was from a man pleading for his life as insurgents opened fire on his truck. We still to this day don't know if it was just a glitch or it was intentional, but honestly this isn't the first time hackers have done stuff like this, and I assure you it won't be the last, so I 100% think it was intentional. That's just me. Personally, my personal opinion. Now at number 6 is the low voice. Not my own, because I know I have one. No, somebody else. So back in October of 2017, radio station K94.5 in LA started getting a lot of questions from listeners about a creepy voice they heard on the radio the previous day. The extremely low-pitched voice was heard on select stations and it was just listing off states. But imagine hearing that while casually listening to the radio. You'd be like, what the hell is that? Is that a hit list? Like, is Montana on there? Like, turns out it was an EAS test that wasn't meant to go over the airwaves, but a glitch in some of the radio stations caused it to anyway. The weekly test is sent to local radio stations by common alerting protocol, and they're meant to be decoded by each station but never aired. So I mean, false alarm, but still, imagine that. Imagine you're just vibing to Sorry by Justin Bieber and all of a sudden it's like Virginia, West Virginia, Texas. It's like, dude. That part of the lyrics? I didn't know that. Coming in at number 5 is the intent to take. So in May of 2019, an Amber Alert was sent out looking for William Gooden, a 3-year-old boy said to be abducted by his mum Brianna. The two were apparently wandering around Rainbow Center Mall and were supposed to be dropped off back to his grandma, who was his official guardian. But the mother and kid failed to show up, so naturally the grandma called the police. Ain't nobody taking my kid today. Police started scrambling, looking at places the mum frequented, including the Greyhound station, which is essentially just a bus service in Canada. Is it in America? I'm not really sure. Correct me if I'm wrong. Either way, at 3 AM that night, an employee confirmed to the police that the two had been seen boarding a bus going to Toronto from Sudbury. 3 alerts were sent out throughout the day, so you can imagine how scared everyone was just getting these alerts in the middle of the night trying to find this missing kid. The boy was found at 7:30 AM after a tip came in from his own mum, and police never really concluded whether her intent was to kidnap him or not. Maybe it was a day field trip to Toronto, I don't know. Still weird the fact she was the one who phoned in her own tip. Like, oh, I found the woman with the missing kid. At number 4 is the New York frenzy. Back in September of 2016, New Yorkers got an emergency alert in the morning that said this: Wanted Ahmed Khan Rahami, 28-year-old male. See media for pic. Call 911 if seen. Along with a piercing tone is so bad it'd probably wake up the dead. I'm not even lying to you right now. The alert was in regards to the attack on Chelsea that happened on the Saturday beforehand that injured more than 24 people. Now usually wireless emergency alerts have 3 purposes. They're either from the president, they're Amber Alerts, or they're to do with imminent threats to the public's safety. This alert was none of those things, and how unprofessional to be like, see media for picture, which literally means Google it and treat anyone that looks like they could be Muslim or called Ahmed like utter sh**. WEAs are limited to 90 characters, which is even shorter than a tweet, you guys. Surely that has to be changed. Their geotagging is also very poor, meaning it alerts people nowhere near the desired epicenter. But as you can imagine, anyone getting the alert flipped sh**, and rightfully so. Now at number 2 is Virginia Tech campus. This one's from Diana Jones Cox, who shared the story on Quora back in 2018. Diana shared that she lives quite close to the Virginia Tech campus, and the area already had issues with an escaped prisoner killing people as well as gun carriers on campus. Both of which are just very problematic, but I'm just gonna sweep that under the rug for a second. In April of 2007, a student on campus shot 33 people, and Diana was one of many people that got the high alert about the situation. Everyone was freaking out, not knowing all the full details or where the shooter even was. Diana was watching from her office as police car after ambulance was rushing to the campus. Phone lines were jammed because of how many people were calling. The whole thing was anarchy and all very real. Imagine being there, getting the high alert when all of this was actually happening, and that is a lot to deal with. It was one of the deadliest school shootings for a very long time, just FYI. And finally, at number 1 is Hatefulness. On the 20th of February 1971, US citizens were in a widespread panic due to a federal alert test gone wrong, making them think a nuclear war was about to occur. The alert system used to get tested every Saturday, but on that particular Saturday, a real message came over the teletype network that sits inside every single TV and radio station. This was the message. The message read as follows: This is an emergency action notification directed by the president. Normal broadcasting will cease immediately. Hatefulness was also used before the message, and that was that day's special code word that broadcasters knew to mean the message was real. Not a drill, people, this is not a drill. Immediately, programming was cut and no one was keeping their exposure. It was bad. Listeners started calling in, people started fearing the worst, but thankfully 40 minutes later the Office of Civil Defense sent a cancellation message with the right code word, impish, which is, I mean, it's kind of borderline ironic, isn't it?
Coming in at number 10, we have Max Headroom. This one is one of the most bizarre and famous TV hijackings of all time. Back in the era of basic cable, before you could steal stuff on the internet at any moment of the day, and before Netflix was funneling endless content right into your home, you had to get all your viewing pleasures from the movies and cable. And one day in 1987, there were some people in Chicago who were in for a very strange surprise. They were all just chilling, watching Doctor Who, and then out of nowhere there was a guy who was dressed up as Max Headroom. Max Headroom was a fake character from a British TV show. He was completely digital looking, like an episode of Reboot. But this dude wasn't the official Max Headroom. No, he was wearing a mask and he just started yelling things into the camera, saying some strange things like the Coke slogan. I don't think that he worked for Coke. And he closed the whole thing out by pulling down his pants and having a woman with a French maid's outfit spank his butt with a fly swatter. The best part about this is no one had any idea who this was, and people think that he had some sort of nefarious plan, but I think he just wanted to cause chaos. Next, we have Mayday. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the show Mayday, but it's one of those disaster reenactment shows where something goes terribly wrong and they interview the people that it happened to. It's the kind of stuff you see on the Discovery Channel now that they don't have any shows about science. But this was being shown in Australia on the 7 network back in 2007. That seems like a lifetime ago now. But the show was doing its regular thing, talking about planes falling out of the sky, and then out of nowhere an audio recording just changed the entire tone. It was someone saying over and over, "Jesus Christ, help us, Lord." Now, when you're watching a show about plane crashes, you can imagine that this might be seen as something that was supposed to be there. But this was on repeat for 6 minutes. One of the weirdest parts about this was that it was all in a southern accent. And on top of that, once the story hit the news and everyone was talking about how weird this was, and the video was uploaded to the internet, the network denied that it ever happened. They said that the audio was part of the original broadcast. Like, what are you talking about? There's a 6-minute chunk of someone calling out for help from Jesus. Next on the list, we have God's opinion on Playboy. I don't think that the Lord and Savior would be very happy about people watching the Playboy channel. Well, there was a Christian man who certainly thought so, and he wanted all the people watching to know. This was back in 1987 when the Playboy channel was interrupted by a broadcast that was screaming Bible verses about how they're sinners and God is watching and blah blah blah. You guys know how it always goes. The man responsible for this was Thomas Haney, who worked for the Christian Broadcasting Network. He would be arrested for this 3 years later. Next on the list, we have The Old Couple. This one is shrouded in a field of mystery. To this day, no one knows what went down with this hijacking. For this story, we're going to have to shoot back to the year 2007. Everyone at home was watching some regular cable television, and then something insane came in and shocked all of them. It was a still image of 2 faces. Now that doesn't seem insane, but it was the mood that the faces set. Neither one of these faces were real people. They both looked like they had been made in some sort of software. One of them had a big happy grin on its face, and the other one was a frowning creepy face, almost like they were representations of theater, comedy, and tragedy. This image stayed on the screen for a while. There was 0 sound that came along with it, and then it was gone. To this day, no one knows what the hell it meant or why they were there. Some people think that it was a dark omen, but the network says that it was just a scheduling error, and the image was actually from an ad that was supposed to play later. Next on the list, guys, we have Captain Midnight. Not everyone who is going to take over a broadcast is going to do so just for a strange spanking session or to yell out religious incantations that don't really make any sense. No, some people are going to do it for a noble cause. Well, in their mind, it's probably a noble cause. Captain Midnight, also known as John R. McDougal, that's his real name, was a man who used his understanding of satellite networks to send out a message to everyone who was watching HBO back in the 80s. This, of course, happened close to midnight. Well, it was closer to 12:30, but you get what he was going for. The broadcast interruption that he sent out was chastising HBO for their high prices. Their price scheme was affecting his satellite business, and he had to get a second job, so he wanted to protest, and it was a pretty famous protest. He might have gotten away with it if he wasn't such a blabbermouth. The dude was eventually caught because someone heard him bragging about the whole thing at a bar, but on the bright side, he didn't have any jail time, just had to pay a fine and then was put on probation. Next on the list, we have The Zombies Are Here. I don't know if you guys are into zombies taking over the earth, but when I think about it, I kind of get excited. Like, if the zombies come and we all have to go into full apocalypse mode, then it resets a lot of stuff back at 0. Who cares how much money you have? The new currency is food, water, and bullets. But people in Montana might have thought that the end of the world was coming via zombie takeover, and it was sent out to the perfect group of people. People watching the Steve Wilkos show. You know, the folks that are hanging out watching daytime TV are the ones who would be most excited about the end of the world coming. But during an episode of the Steve Wilkos show in 2013, there was a warning that went across the screen and warned the people that the dead were coming back to life and attacking the living. Of course, this was fake. I think if there's anywhere in the world where the dead are going to come back to life, it's not going to be in Montana. Usually it would seem that these things happen because of some advanced science going awry, and I don't think there's any high-tech happenings going on over there. Next on the list, guys, we have the Wyoming hijacking. I think we have gotten to the point where you can't hijack a signal anymore unless you have some of the best tech on the market, and even if you did, you would probably get caught pretty fast. But back in the day, you could get away with it easy peasy. The Wyoming incident is one of the weirdest ever. It was a hijacking of a news broadcast after the 2008 election. Seems like a pretty good time to steal the news. There would have been so many people watching. The broadcast was just some black and white bars across the screen and a series of words that popped up. It closed out with some very strange images of heads that seemed to be digitized. The messages were creepy, claiming that people will see beautiful things and that some of the people will become sick. And the messages all used the statement "we" as if there was a group of people who were sending out these messages. The whole thing was very strange and never explained, and there were rumors that some of the people who watched the broadcast actually started to hallucinate. Next on the list, we have Radiological. Nothing like a good old-fashioned message that came from outer space. That's what we really need on this channel. Well, this was for sure a message from a person, they just claimed that it was from space. The Radiological incident lasted about 6 minutes and it took place in 1977. It was a voice that was able to commandeer the news at 5 a.m. and talk to the people watching and say that he was from space and that he was warning humanity that they needed to stop fighting, that they were too in love with war, and that if they didn't change their ways, that a force would come in and stop them. He also said that our constant fighting was causing us to miss out on the age of Aquarius, which was the next step in evolution. Next on the list, we have Kaluga. For this one, we're going to have to shoot over to Soviet Russia in the mid-60s. That must have been like Disneyland. I'm just joking. It was a very dark place and there were no jokes. But back then, there was something known as the Kaluga incident, which might have been one of the scariest things that ever happened during a TV hijacking. This happened in the city of Kaluga. Everyone was chilling, watching TV, and then out of nowhere, a message came on the screen that made everyone feel like they were about to die. The message said that the Americans had launched a rocket at the USSR, and these were in fact nuclear warheads. There was mass panic, but eventually everyone got the word that the message was a fake. The person responsible was an 18-year-old boy who was using a transmitter to hijack the signal. He was later arrested and had to make a public apology and swear that he would never broadcast anything ever again. And finally, guys, we have the Wenzhou protest. This is one of the crazier ones on this list because it wasn't just someone sending out a vague, unclear message or something creepy put on TV for an unknown reason. Back in 2014 in the town of Wenzhou, China, there was a very clear message that popped up on cable. It was a message speaking out against the communism in the Chinese government and a message telling people they should switch to a pro-democratic system. They used images of Tank Man from the Tiananmen Square to get these messages across, and the hijack was up for about 10 minutes. This was a short-lived moment. Now, as far as I know, the people who pulled off this stunt were never found. But there's one thing I know about China, and that's don't speak out against the government unless you want to go missing. So there is a chance that these people were found and just put in a hole so no one would ever find them ever again.
Starting us off, in at number 10, we have the tsunami siren in Maui. Imagine you're on a nice sandy beach in Maui sipping on Mai Tais when all of a sudden you begin to hear this obnoxious siren. This terrifying sound can be heard on the first working day of each month at 11:45 a.m. The siren goes on for 50 seconds with a 20-second break followed by a 50-second wailing tone. But if I was visiting Hawaii, as a tourist, I would honestly think that the world is ending and I'm about to die. I would go in full panic mode and my survival instincts would kick into high gear if I have survival instincts. As it turns out, this is a tsunami alarm, but there's just something about its high-pitched death wail that doesn't sit right with me. Number 8, we're talking about the time when aliens hacked a British TV show. I kid you not. On the night of November 26, 1977, a news program was interrupted by the voice of Vrillin, which was supposedly an alien from the Ashtar Galactic Command. And this is what he had to say.
For many years you have seen us as knights and experiments. We speak to you now to say the same as we have done to your brothers and sisters all over this, your planet Earth.
He goes on to say that they've been watching us for years, and now we know that they are here. He also said that there are more aliens here on Earth that our scientists don't want to admit. Even though this was a hoax written all over it, so many people believed that this was real and they were losing their minds because they thought that aliens were going to invade Earth and wipe out the human race. But you know what? I'm not ruling that out quite yet. Jumping into number 7, we have the end of the world warning. Apparently people were predicting that on Saturday, September 23rd, 2017, which was not too long ago, a new planet was going to collide with Earth, and this impact would be catastrophic enough to destroy us. This emergency alert was broadcasted all over LA, and it caused a ton of people to panic. Even though it was later revealed to be nothing more than a hoax, doomsday cults were in full effect, and people were preparing for the end of the world. I'm pretty sure if a large planet was on its way to, hitting Earth, we'd hear about it a lot sooner, and we'd probably be able to see it coming. Number 5. What you're about to hear is a siren that was made by Elector back in the 1930s. Is it just me, or does this sound like Leatherface is coming to kill us? Well, let's take a step back for a minute. Could you imagine what it was like to live back then? You can literally be sleeping, and in the middle of the night, you were abruptly woken up by this chilling sound that would send you into a complete panic. Because if you heard this alarm, it meant that bombs were about to drop from the sky and it's all over. Tornado siren in Chicago brings us to number 4. I feel like this siren is a good representation of what an ice cream truck from hell would sound like. Why would Chicago pick this as their tornado warning sign? It's gotta be one of the most unsettling things that I've ever heard. How are people from Chicago okay with this? This siren would absolutely terrify me, and I'd probably consider moving to another state if I heard this. This is probably why tornadoes don't usually hit Chicago, because they're afraid of the sirens. At number 2. Do you guys remember that time when someone accidentally triggered a false missile alert in Hawaii that caused everyone to panic? And this kind of came after the huge tension with North Korea and America, so we thought that this was real. It was very plausible. People were running from their cars, they were crawling in public spaces trying to find a safe place to go, and people were huddled around their TVs waiting to hear more about this threat. This is the emergency alert that caused the 38 minutes of terror in Hawaii.
Stick missile threat inbound to Hawaii. Seek immediate shelter. This is not a drill. Now, this is a warning that was sent to people's phones. They showed up on their TVs. They played on the radio stations across the state.
State officials say all of this panic was caused by someone hitting the wrong button.
And now, coming in at number 1 on our list, we have the incoming missile attack warning. Take a look at this very scary emergency siren.
The air siren did not go, and it's going on now, so we're just going to duck a little bit. The air siren is now, usually there's about 10 to 15 seconds. We can hear the noise. I cannot see it, but what we can see is a trail of rockets in the sky. We're not really sure where it's heading.
People all over Israel are used to hearing this missile attack warning, and they know that they better take cover because a missile warning is in full effect. I couldn't imagine on how much terror or fear that they must feel every time that this siren goes off. I would definitely have PTSD.